Welcome to the second week of animating every day until I'm good. Sorry if you guys can hear my dog snoring in the background. He's depressed since my parents are gone and he refuses to be left alone, so he'll be joining us for the recording session. This project has been a really good motivator so far to keep myself moving, so far so good on the holding myself accountable front. Last week, I kicked us off with some quadruped walk cycles, and I got some great advice from an old colleague of mine, who by the way is an amazing animator and you guys should totally check him out. Alec, I could always count on you and your brother to give me the most thoughtful feedback during school, and it's so awesome that I can still count on you guys all these years later. I did my best to go back and implement your advice, though I definitely feel like the back leg could still use a bit more of that kick you mentioned. This week was all about the Roadkill God. To give you guys a bit of lore on this guy, he's part of my Gothic Americana project Leylines, working title, and he's the deity of all the roadkill left to rot by careless or unlucky drivers. Long drives like that are pretty much integral to American culture, so I've been brainstorming creatures to haunt the roadways of the story. Among the handful I've come up with so far, the Roadkill God is my favorite. I used to count roadkill with my mom on cross-country road trips, and it always made me sad thinking about how suddenly and violently an unsuspecting animal's life would end due to something so ingrained in our daily lives. Hence, awesome horror material. Anyways, I jumped back into animating on Tuesday, aka day 2, because technically I spent Monday wrapping up the cat cycle from last week. I slowed this walk cycle down from 32 frames to 42 frames because it was still moving a bit fast for me. I redid the front and back legs in 2 separate passes, trying to figure out how to give the deer a bit more of a disjointed gait. You know when you're exhausted, so you walk with your knees locked, and then you step and bend your knee and feel yourself about to fall, so you have to catch yourself with your other foot? That was the feeling I was going for with the front legs, and I think it turned out alright. I went back and lined the deer here because things were getting kind of messy, and I wanted a still rough but cleaner version to work with, so this became my new base. On day 3, I finally got to go in and add the intestines hanging out of the deer's body. I doubt this is exceptionally anatomically accurate, but we're going for visual recognition over accuracy here. This next part sounds kind of gross, sorry. I tried to picture the guts hanging like a plastic bag full of water in order to visualize the motion in my mind. It should sway back and forth in response to the movement of the whole body, but still have some obvious weight to it. It was definitely easier to conceptualize it with simple shapes before I went back in and scribbled in the details. Next, I added some patches on the deer to indicate places where the skin would have been stripped away to reveal the muscle. This was inspired by a particularly graphic carcass I saw decomposing on the highway one time, but I'll spare you guys the gory details. Anyways, I got some practice following patterns over the imagined form of the moving character back when I was animating the cat cycle, so this was familiar territory. I was putting off dealing with the head because there are several smaller details to make sure I'm keeping consistent, and the jaw is a secondary movement that I'd fumbled through for several passes but hadn't yet been satisfied with. Finally, on day 4, enough was enough, and I just copy and pasted it in there to get something put to page. The other part I was avoiding was the second antler because it's just such an annoying shape, but I slapped something onto the page and moved on and figured I'd deal with it later. On day 5, I added the tail using the same shape-only process I used for the second antler. I went back in and added these bits where it seems cut out because I wanted to emphasize that it's not really part of the deer's physical body and is more of a spiritual mirage. I think giving it a gradient opacity effect when I go back and color it would help with this, if I can figure that out. After the tail, I got to go back and add the flies, which I was super excited to do because it's just so easy and small, and I thought it would be a cool detail to have that looping within the larger loop. You can see where I drew the path that each group of flies would follow before adding them to each frame. I have kind of a thought to add something around the shoulder area because the bottom half of the deer just feels so visually crowded, I guess, that I feel like that piece kind of like is empty and needs something to draw the eye back up and around. But honestly, I'm kind of going back and forth on it, and I don't want to overcrowd the design, you know what I'm saying? So if any of you guys have any input to that effect, let me know. I'm trying to decide if I want to give myself weekends off when I'm doing this project, but for now I'm just taking Sunday to work on other stuff like writing or recording or whatever else. So on day 6, I finally got to start my actual line art pass, and it took me so long to draw out each frame. It took me 5 hours to go back in and make sure all the pieces were drawn correctly and weren't jumping around, and there are still so many places where the shapes are inconsistent. I'll be going back to clean up the antlers and the guts at the very least, and I only got halfway through the whole deer. So sadly, though it was my goal to have at least the line art done for today's update, we didn't quite make it. No worries though, that just means we'll have something to check off our list even sooner come next week. I'm not really sure what exactly I'm going to animate after this cycle is done. Maybe I'll go back to some other projects I have in the whips and start chipping away at those, but we'll see. If you guys have any suggestions or critique to offer, feel free to drop by the comment section. Anyways, thank you guys so much for sticking this one out to the end. Much love, and I'll see you next week.